Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here to talk about the top 10 cards I think are going to go up when Kykar Wind's Fury inevitably will spawn commander decks surrounding this popular commander. So this card is going to come out in Core 2020, which each new set there's always a commander out of the most recent set that does spike up cards. Think Hepatra, think Feather, I think now Urza from Modern Horizons. And getting ahead of these type of cards is always smart before these cards go up in value. Commander continues to be the most popular format, and to an extent I'm going to start putting Oathbreaker into the mix. So let's talk about Kykar Wind's Fury, and then I'm going to give you my top 10 cards that I am currently speccing in on for this card. So of course, Kykar has a lot of duh cards that are going to be put in the deck. The first one being Anointed Procession. Anointed Procession, though, is currently at a flat. I don't know if a card like Kykar is going to add even more demand to really spike the value of Anointed Procession, but I'm going to say that probably the most decks are going to have Anointed Procession in the deck. So this is a good place to park money. It's going to go up in value because of it, but I don't know if it's going to substantially be spiked due to Kykar. The next one is cards like Docent of Perfection. There are tons and tons and tons of cards out there. Young Pyromancer, Talrand, the new Saheeli, Psymaster Thopterist, that spawn other tokens. These sort of cards already go in a ton of different commander decks. I don't particularly see this commander giving any more demand that already exists for this type of card. Again, we're looking for cards that are lying low right now that are specifically going to have a huge new wave of demand because of Kykar, not ones that already have a currently high demand and maybe have the price to reflect that. So definitely keep your eye on cards like Docent of Perfection, cards like Saheeli from the War of the Spark, or Young Pyromancer, or Monastery Mentor. Those type of cards will probably have a little bit of a bump, but I don't know if it's going to be substantial enough because of it. Then we have cards like Mirrorwing Dragon, or even like cards like Gutter Snipe, all the cards that trigger off of casting instant or sorceries. Mirrorwing Dragon is one that almost made my top 10, but I just barely called it for Feather, and it did have that spike because of Feather. We could see another spike with Mirrorwing Dragon because the going to be spawning a lot of spirit tokens, and then if you cast a card that targets Mirrorwing Dragon, it's going to hit all of the spirits and copy, and then those don't hit the cast effect though, but if it is a draw type of ability, you're going to be drawing a lot of cards, and then having those spirits being able to sacrifice could lead to some pretty crazy combos. So I'd keep my eye on Mirrorwing Dragon again, but I think that it recently spiked because of Feather. I don't know if it's got another spike left in it because of Kykar. Other cards like Cathar's Crusade, same thing. Any sort of go-ahead strategy, this is a very, very popular card in those decks. I think it's smart to put some money into Cathar's Crusades, but I'm not expecting a huge double up or triple up. The card's known. It's not a sleeper. Same thing could be said about Impact Tremors and Perforos. I think that the Impact Tremor is a little more exciting, even because I think it could go back up to the $1.75, $2 range. This is the common out of Dragons of Tarkir, but I highly, highly, highly caution because this is probably going to be a reprint in the Commander 2018. I have never seen a card as a common this recent be able to survive this long without it having some sort of printing in a supplemental set. So I think the Commander 2018 will have Impact Tremors. So for that reason, I think Perforos could easily approach the $30 mark and get another big bump. This is another card that's just going to continue to go up because it sees play in a bazillion different decks. If the new Krenko can't spawn Perforos, I don't think that Kykar is going to spawn any sort of growth in Perforos rather than its natural growth. But keep your eye on this one. It's got a great synergy with being able to pump those creatures as well as have that ability for whenever it enters the battlefield deal 2 damage. So this is going to be more strain on Perforos, another great place to sink your money. Then we got to look at cards that work around the Spirit Tribal, and cards like Supreme Phantom out of M19 are at the lowest they've been. This is a smart little pickup for the deck, and just because Spirits are actually doing pretty reasonable in Modern. There are some good finishes in the last few weeks for Modern Spirits, Azorius and Bant Spirits. That have some pretty good showings. I can't remember what the card is that pushed over the top. I think it's a new Planeswalker out of Modern Horizons. Sarah was going quite well in the Spirit decks. But I think that for Commander's sake, this is a good lord. If people do decide to go the full out on Spirit Tribal, which some percentage of these decks definitely will, I think that adding the Supreme Phantom to your portfolio is probably a great pickup right now, as it already is at its all-time low. And I mean, $150 is very, very low for a card as powerful as this that does see play in Modern and does see play in casual Spirit decks. I think that Spirits, speaking of Modern, are just a one drop away from being legit. I think that's the difference between them and Humans, is Humans has the consistency that Spirits doesn't have, and it also has a little more aggression because it has some very powerful one drops, and the Spirits are really lacking. They only have one drop that they like to play at the moment in the Vile Spirits for Modern. So speaking of Spirits too, cards like Drogskol Captain, this is another one will give all your Spirits hexproof and +1/+1. I don't think that tokens really care that much of having hexproof, but again, this works very well with the Spirit Tribal. Another one, Mausoleum Wanderer, that speaking of the one drop that does see play in Spirits, it looks like it has got a little bit of bump in this past day, which could be a sign to come for the Spirit Tribal for Commander. However, this one is very interesting because it does get +1/+1 every time a Spirit enters the battlefield. Kykar is going to be pumping out a ton of Spirits, and this card is going to, of course, benefit from that. So those are kind of things you should keep your eye on. These are all cards that I had in my initial list, but it didn't make the top 10 cut because I think there's just better picks. So again, this is a commander that's a little bit difficult to really pinpoint where the spikes are going to come from, because you can go so many different directions with this particular deck. You can go artifacts. You can just go like a storm artifact strategy that we've seen, go into, like I said before, Saheeli and Sai and the Dominaria, the one that draws a card every time you cast an artifact, and then cards like Retrace and then returning all those artifacts to your hand and recasting everything and generating a ton of mana by sacrificing the spirits and casting a big spell. That could easily be a route that people go with Kykar. Same thing with the Spirit Tribal, same thing with even another go wide type strategy. So with that said, though, I think that these cards in my top 10 list are a lot more lucrative, mainly due to their price point, or that they've really never found a place in any other decks. Or I think a lot of decks will want to be running these in all of the above, all of the different routes you can go with Kykar Wind's Fury. So starting off my number 10, this is one of my junk mythic picks that I think that if there ever is going to be a commander that does make this card go up in value, this is the best we have. So this is Ojutai Exemplars. So the combo with Ojutai's Exemplars is having something like Impact Tremors or Perforos, and then every time you cast a non-creature spell, you exile Ojutai's Exemplar and return it to the battlefield tapped. So you're going to get that initial damage off of the Spirit coming into play, and then you're also going to be exiling and bringing back in Ojutai's Exemplar. So all of those trigger abilities for creatures coming to play will trigger again. Again, that's a bit of a stretch, but these cards do tend to see a little bit of play here and there for these type of creatures entering the battlefield type effects. So again, 81 cents for a mythic. Dragons of Tarkir, we just saw an Impact Tremors, a common that is worth more than this particular card. So this is a good junk rare pick or junk mythic pick, in my opinion, for a double up or a triple up to be a bit of a sleeper. The market price is extremely low on this card. Kingdom is extremely low. But yeah, the reward, I think it outweighs the risk, in my opinion, for this card. The next one is Twilight Drover. Again, I don't know how much the Spirit Tribal is going to see play, but this particular card sees a lot of play in token-based strategies, even if it doesn't have the Spirit Tribal theme to it. So whenever a creature token leaves play, you put a +1 counter on Twilight Drover. You're going to be sacrificing the Spirits for red mana, and then you remove a +1 counter from Twilight Drover, you put 2 Spirits. So this nets you 2 red at the cost of 2 and a white. So if something can reduce this, so you think of things like Training Grounds that can reduce this ability down to just white, then you're netting up infinite mana. So I think that this is going to be one of the combos that's going to be talked about when Command Zone does their deck tech for the Kykar deck, which they will do. They're going to identify these combos. So Training Grounds and Twilight Drover, many other cards that we already know make infinite combos with Twilight Drover, and show one here in a second that can net up a ton of mana by removing counters to put 1/1 Spirit tokens, sacrifice those Spirit tokens to add mana and any other effect, and just going crazy with it. So I think Twilight Drover is going to see a huge bump because of Kykar. Next one is another kind of junk foil spec. This is Rousing of Souls. This is another one that I think that goes well in a spirit tribal with Kykar. And the ability to have this draw card is also very significant. So it's got the parlay ability. Each player reveals the top card of the library. For each non-land card revealed this way, you put a +1/+1 spirit creature token with flying on the battlefield. You're already going to get one because of your general, and then you're going to be able to draw a card. And so anyone else that reveals one, you get another spirit creature token. So that is huge to generate in a 4-player, possibly generating 4 1/1 white spirit creature tokens and cantrip this card, because cantrips are going to be very, very powerful in this particular strategy. I was going to mention looking at Feather the Redeemed for inspiration too, because a lot of the same, I guess that's where Mirrorwing came into play. A lot of the same type of strategy is going to be at least spawn for, I'd say, probably at least a 10th of these decks, or maybe even 25% of it, just playing a bunch of cantrips, generating a lot of 1/1 white spirit creature tokens, and then swinging for lethal. Even cards like Heroic Intervention can go in these particular decks. So we won't even look at how this card might be able to spawn decks in Standard. I think Standard's a different beast right now, but it actually seems pretty good in a Wizard deck, to be honest, by having that Wizard tribal and then creating 1/1 spirit creature tokens as well. Anyway, that's a whole different video for another day. All right, so on to the next one. This one is Thousand Year Storm. I've picked this because I don't think this card is going to go any lower. This was a promo for I believe the launch promo was Thousand Year Storm, so there are more foils out here. That's why the foil price is relatively low for a Mythic, because they did exist as a promotional beyond just the pre-release foil, the stamp foil. So Thousand Year Storm is one of the more played cards out of Guilds of Ravnica. There are plenty of decks, commanders that already want it and have played it and have slowly been putting it into their 99. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it for each other instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn. Your spirits are going to allow you to cast a lot of cards. So, I mean, storm-based decks are going to be enabled with Kykar, with being able to sacrifice them. So, Grape Shot type decks, Empty the Warren type decks, those type of things. Where Storm, Haze of Rage is another card. Let's just pull that one up here real quickly. So, Haze of Rage is another interesting one that almost made my top 10 list, with the buyback of 2 and then creatures you control get +1/+0, and then Storm. The Storm doesn't create another 1/1 spirit every time, but if you cast a bunch of spells before this, and then you have a way to give them haste, this is a way for all of your spirits then to deal lethal. So again, this is one you should definitely keep your eye on. The foils are quite cheap. The regulars are quite cheap for Future Sight Uncommon. But anyway, back to Thousand Year Storm. A lot of the Storm type cards are going to be in various decks for the Kykar deck. So this one, again, keep your eye on. I think I'm mainly picking this because of its price point, and then I think it's going up anyway, and I think it's going to start getting outstretched. I think it's going to be one of those sleeper mythics that a few years down the road, we're going to look back and be like, wow, this was a great time to get in on anyway for around the $3 mark. So let's go on to another foil that I think is incredibly undervalued right now. Card Kingdom has them at 99 cents. And the market price of them is about $1.84. This is Frantic Search. So why I like Frantic Search is this is the only foiling that is reasonable. So I had a Urza's Legacy foiling at $35. So if people are looking to foil out their decks for Commander, a Frantic Search is already going to start going up, in my opinion. Ultimate Masters is done. There's not any more supply that is entering into the market. And this is an extremely popular card in Commander, and I think that every Kykar deck is going to want this. Anything that is a free spell because you're untapping 3 lands, this is basically netting you up mana as well as fixing your hand. If you're netting you up mana by having the Spirit come into play, if you have any way to reduce this, so if you're running Goblin Electromancer, which I'm assuming some of the decks are going to be running, or any other ability that reduces the mana cost, this is going to potentially net up a ton of mana with the Spirit creature coming into play. The bounce lands, the tap for 2 lands, of course, are going to work off of Frantic Search. So I think that getting on the Frantic Search foil is smart time at this moment. All right, so now we're getting on to the really good stuff. I have a hard time seeing Mana Echoes not going in a deck of that is generating creatures every time you cast a creature spell. So Mana Echo says whenever a creature comes into play, you may add 1 to your mana pool for each creature you control that shares a creature type with it. There we have kind of this great combo with Mana Echoes, with then being able to, with the Twilight Drover, removing cards. Yes, you're going to be stretched with the red, but it's going to allow you to activate the Twilight Drover a ton and then generate a ton of mana through Mana Echoes, and possibly even have a big spell that then can do even more, untapping all your lands, for example, or just creating a massive chain effect after mana echoes. So 4 mana is very, very low for a deck like this. Many, like Krenko decks and other go white strategies in red, run mana echoes. That's why it's a $27 card. I think this card is going to go crazy. Onslaught is a long time ago. It's never had a reprint. So warning, this card probably is on the short list for reprintings, because usually it's hard to find a legacy card above $25 that's not on the reserve list, because they do print them in subsequent sets that come out just to have some attractiveness to buying that set. So think of Battle Bonds, Conspiracies, but this one hasn't been printed, and I don't think they want it in like a Modern Horizons type thing, so it might be safe for a while. We do have that Commander set coming out, could be a chase card in that, and the card will get crushed. But this is a very, very good spec with the knowledge we have right now, thinking that I think this card will double up because of Kykar. I think that the supply is so razor thin for this card, and the demand is going to be increased tenfold because of this. It's going to go in basically every deck. It's just so synergistic with the card. On to the next one. This is a bit of a risky spec, but so far Grandmaster has just never really found a place in Commander because it's been awkward with the mana being into the Jeskai colors. Well, this is a Jeskai deck. I think this could have a Training Grounds synergy again. The next time you cast an instant sorcery spell from your hand this turn, you put that card in your hand instead of into your graveyard as it resolves. So it allows for a lot of chain effects. Now back to the Storm synergies. So the Seething Songs, the what's the mana, the one that where you tap and add a red for each one of your opponent's tapped lands. This is going to go crazy with Soulfire Grandmaster, being able to cast it, return it back to your hand, or Battle Hymn's another one that works really well with when you're generating tokens. So Battle Hymn is going to add a red mana for every creature you control. Therefore, if you're up to where you have, 6 mana? So if you have 6 mana or 6 creatures at that point, you can just continue to cycle the Battle Hymn back in your hand and generate infinite mana and generate infinite spirit creature tokens. So I really like Soulfire Grandmaster. I actually do like Battle Hymn as a soft spec too. The foils are crazy though, so you'd have to be looking at the normals at that point. So Soulfire Grandmaster, if there ever was a commander that could get, again, it's another junk mythic. It's about a Fate Reforged. We've seen other mythics go crazy. I think that the time is to shine for this particular card. Now, this is another kind of risky spec, but these are the type of sleeper-based cards that I really like. I love the foil price of this. Ribbons are the Rakai. So there hasn't been a good spirit generator like we've seen for other ones. If you actually look, if you go to the Gatherer and you actually type in spirit token, you come up with a bunch of cards, but not a lot of very good renewable resources that spit out a bunch of spirits, and especially in blue. Anything can actually use blue. You see a lot of black-white spirits, things that can generate a lot of those, but blue, this hasn't really found a commander before. But I finally think that Ribbons of the Rakai is going to go in a lot of casual decks for this particular commander, as well as could even go, I don't think it's that far off to go to think in a more competitive deck. You're drawing a card for each spirit you control. If you cast a ton of cards, it feels like Locust God, how many of these tokens you're going to be generating, and then you're going to be casting this card and you're drawing a lot of cards for that card. Now there is another card, Distant Melody, that already exists that does it just better for 1 less. So this one states, choose a creature type, draw a card for each permanent you control of that type. It's 1 less. So people are like, well, Distant Melody is just better. Well, yeah, it is. But this is, I think there will be some Arcane decks, Spirit of Arcane decks that work around Kykar. However, this particular one, it's the price point. The price point is so crazy for a foil, Betrayers of Kamigawa foil, and it's 32 cents. I think that this is a card you must get in on ASAP. It is just insanely, the potential here is just crazy with the foil. We're going to see the foil multiplier probably be tenfold. This can be a $3 card when the dust settles. All right, but there's one other card that I think is actually a better spec right now, and this is Jeskai Ascendancy. Again, this is another card that I highly, highly, highly do not see not being included in these decks. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you can go get +1/+1, untap those creatures. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So this can be synergized with a lot of ways if you can tap your creatures to generate mana. Unfortunately, there's not like Earthcraft, but there is the, what's the artifact that allows you to, if you put it on a creature, Paradise Mantle, for example. You can go crazy with Paradise Mantle and Jeskai Ascendancy and generate a ton of mana and generate a ton of spirits. So the price point's really good here. The foil pricing multiplier is pretty decent too for a Khans of Tarkir. We're starting to see this time period be able to go up in value. There's been some modern decks recently with Jeskai Ascendancy. This is a card that just gets better and better with the more cards printed. Gitaxian Probe getting banned. Gitaxian Probe, by the way, will probably go in every Kykar deck as well. But again, I think Gitaxian Probe is still going down due to being banned in Pauper. But it hurt it for Modern too with the Jeskai Ascendancy decks. But I think there will be another time where Jeskai Ascendancy will be a deck in Modern that's actually playable. So anyway, there you have it with my top 10. I'm sure there are so many other cards that could make this list. The field is just wide open. So the thing you should be looking for is that Command Zone or the Tolarian Community College Commander deck tech that comes out for this particular commander. I'm going to try to do a commander of my own for this particular one, so be looking for that video. I'm going to try to bust out some commander-based videos on my Rogue Deck Builder channel. There's 2 of them from Core 2020 that are very interesting that I think would make some good commander deck techs. But anyway, yeah, lots of routes to go, but all of them I think are pretty... the cards that I picked will go in the majority of those particular cards. So this is my choice. I don't think there will be... it's far-fetched to think there will be a commander that's going to be more popular coming out of this set. Usually it's 1 or 2 of them that cause a lot of price spikes, and this one I think it's just a home run for the picks surrounding it. Hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. For other content, be sure to check out the spoiler video over at the Rogue Deck Builder for Market Monday, which has a lot of info on some of the cards that are being spoiled and cards surrounding them. Thanks for watching.